From military artifacts found in a random Alpine cave to one of the greatest Inca treasures uncovered at the beach, here are 10 of the most incredible treasures found in unexpected places. Number 10. Soldiers' Artifacts. A melting glacier in Italy has revealed a collection of incredible treasures left behind by a group of soldiers in World War I. This isn't the kind of treasure that you would get rich, but it does have amazing historical value. These soldiers' artifacts were found inside a cave near the peak of Mount Scorluzzo. This was the place where 20 Austrian soldiers took shelter during the brutal fight of the war. There was a battle going on in the snowy Stelvio Pass. The soldiers not only had to fight the enemy, they also had to fight the extreme cold. They sought refuge in the cave, and when they left, they abandoned some of their supplies. Things like food containers, straw mattresses, scraps of newspaper, their helmets, some old coins, and even pieces of ammunition. They left the cave in the final days of the war in November of 1918, with their artifacts quickly being covered over by the encroaching ice. But just recently, the glacier began to melt, and the artifacts revealed themselves once more. But the amazing artifacts were not the only things to be found near the cave. The remains of 2 frozen soldiers were also found near the same cave just a few years ago, victims of what was called the White War. It's not clear if these soldiers had bunkered down in the same place, but they were almost certainly part of the fighting and succumbed to the brutal environment. Number 9. Lake Whiskey. Treasure hunters have found something delicious hiding in a Canadian lake. They uncovered a single bottle of whiskey from the 1960s. Now, that's definitely not as old as it could be, but the fact that a bottle of whiskey was found on the bottom of Lake Ontario at all is kind of a miracle. And when it comes to treasure, there's nothing better than a treasure you can actually enjoy. But where did this mysterious bottle of whiskey come from? According to local legend, a man crashed his boat into a dock in 1964. When he crashed, he lost his entire case of whiskey. Treasure hunters Dieter Müller and Adam Bloxel wanted to find it to prove the legend true. It took just a handful of attempts before they located the sunken stash and discovered 3 bottles, though only one was still sealed. The whiskey was from the Gooderham and Worts Company and still 100% drinkable. But perhaps the most satisfying part for the treasure hunters was that they were proven right. Nobody believed that the whiskey was actually down there until they dove to the bottom of the lake and found them. They believed there could still be some treasure in the area and hoped to go back at a later date to excavate and hopefully find some more liquid treasure. Number 8. Antique Lipstick. A woman discovered something extremely valuable while poking around in her old Victorian house. Her name is Kate, and she purchased a dilapidated home in Connecticut back in 2020 with her husband Cameron. The house is 141 years old, and ever since they made the purchase, they have been painstakingly restoring the old house to make it habitable again, including things like modernizing the electricity and plumbing. The house had been sitting vacant for years before they moved in. It was basically just a ruin. They've discovered smoking residue on the ceilings, a hallway that led to literally nowhere, a set of secret stairs, and a mysterious tower at the front of the house, with a window facing inward. It's been quite an adventure, and one of the most fascinating parts has been finding treasures that haven't been touched by human hands for decades. One of the amazing treasures was found hidden behind an ornate wooden mirror positioned above the fireplace. Behind the mirror, Kate found a stash of old gems, but that wasn't all. She also discovered a Victorian cabinet card hidden behind the wallpaper with the town name in the corner, printed around 1890. There were also antique stamps from 1934. And finally, Kate discovered antique lipstick inside a glass tube, part of a vintage makeup kit that was likely used by the lady of the house over 100 years before Kate was even born. I wonder if she put it on. Number 7. Gold bars in plane bathroom. Something amazing was discovered in an airplane bathroom. Workers cleaning the bathroom of a jet after it landed at an Indian airport discovered about $1.2 million in gold bars. Oh yes, this was a very real treasure, and it was left behind in an airplane bathroom of all places. Airport director B.P. Sharma told NBC News after the discovery that it was, and I quote, "quite a surprise." And yeah, that is a pretty big understatement. The gold bars were packed inside of bags, so the cleaners didn't know immediately what they were dealing with. It wasn't until they inspected the bags later that they found the amazing hoard of gold. The weirdest part is that the gold was abandoned in the toilet. Nobody knows how or why it happened, though authorities suspect somebody was trying to smuggle a massive amount of gold into the country. The plane was a Boeing 737, which had just landed in Kolkata and was supposed to take off for Patna. The gold bars had probably come from the United Arab Emirates, though the plane had also made a stop in Bangkok. It could have come from anywhere and was likely scheduled to be picked up by someone else at the final destination. But alas, those blasted cleaners doing their job spoiled the smuggling operation, and somebody lost out on a massive chunk of cash. 53 pounds worth of gold, to be exact. What do you think the gold was payment for? Who do you think left it behind? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 6. Sunken Nazi treasures. A Nazi aircraft that was on its way to the Eastern Front had been found at the bottom of the sea. It's been described as an underwater time capsule filled with amazing treasure. These treasures include a belt buckle with a Nazi insignia, a soldier's shaving brush, and a pair of boots. Sure, it wasn't filled with Nazi gold, but the historical relics are still pretty cool. And besides, the airplane is a treasure itself. The plane was part of Germany's Luftwaffe, kind of like the US Air Force that operated during World War II. It was discovered by a team of divers at the bottom of the Black Sea, 70 years after it disappeared in the middle of its flight path. Ever since 1942, the fate of the aircraft and its missing crew members had been a mystery. But thanks to underwater photographer Andrei Nekrasov and the rest of his underwater team, the mystery has finally been solved. One of the strangest things about the discovery is actually the boots, which suggests that one or more of the crew members had managed to escape. No bones were found, so they may not have died inside the plane, but rather escaped and swam to shore. Researchers have determined that the plane probably crashed because of weather conditions, with the pilot being forced to make an emergency landing, probably by accident in the water. Number 5. Ultra-rare gold coin. A treasure hunter has discovered one of the rarest gold coins ever worth an estimated $200,000. The coin is a gold penny, and it was unearthed by a man named Wes Dean on the border of Wiltshire and Hampshire in the United Kingdom. It is currently the only coin from the late Anglo-Saxon period held by a private individual. However, Wes could sell the coin at any time and have a small fortune. The coin was minted at the time of the legendary West Saxon King Egbert, who ruled between 802 and 839. There are only 8 coins of its kind currently in existence, and they are only held in private institutions, with 7 of them housed at the British Museum. But this is the only coin minted under King Egbert. The others were simply minted between 630 and 1257. Scientists didn't even know that Egbert minted gold coins until this one was found. In June of 2021, the coin was analyzed, with the results showing that it was made from the highest purity of gold, along with smaller levels of silver and copper. This means it's pure and natural gold. It was probably used for high-status payments, like between royalty or the nobility. Either that, or it was only used as part of sacred religious ceremonies. Number 4. Treasure ring. Archaeologists have discovered a lost Inca ring that somehow washed up on a beach in Florida. It has been called the greatest Inca treasure ring ever discovered in America, and it was found by a metal detecting expert named Gary Drayton, who showed off his discovery on the History Channel series Beyond Oak Island. He was near Vero Beach when he discovered the ring, 22.5 carat, and embedded with 9 flawless emeralds. It has been estimated at a worth of around $750,000. Lucky Gary. It probably washed up on the beach because of a hurricane. But how in the world did an amazing ring make it from the Inca kingdom, way down in Peru, all the way up to Florida? The answer goes back to the 18th century, when Spanish, French, and Portuguese soldiers stole as much treasure as they could from the indigenous populations of what is now Latin America. They tried to bring all that treasure home with them in giant galleons. However, many of these galleons ended up sinking. A huge amount of treasure being smuggled was sometimes lost, sometimes up to $200 million worth. In 1715, a fleet of 6 ships carrying precious cargo, and by precious cargo, I mean stolen treasure, was hit by a hurricane while moving through the Florida Strait on July 31st. The entire fleet sank, and all the jewels were lost. This is why the area along Florida's coast near Vero Beach is known as the Treasure Coast. This particular ring was probably stolen from the Inca, placed on that ship, and then lost when the fleet sank. 300 years later, it washed up on the shore. Number 3. Treasure in the well. A man digging a well in his yard found an unbelievable treasure that could earn him up to $100 million. This has to be the most lucrative home improvement project ever. It happened in Sri Lanka when a homeowner named Mr. Gamage needed to dig a well for water, The workers helping him dig the well in his backyard uncovered the largest star sapphire in the entire world, along with a cluster of other brilliant gemstones that turned him into a multi-millionaire overnight. The main jewel is the most incredible. Experts say the stone is roughly 1,000 pounds and about 2.5 million carats. This is why it's worth such an astounding fortune. But perhaps the most amazing part is that the person who found the valuable stone handed it over to Mr. Gamage instead of stuffing it into his pocket. Though, I guess you can't stuff a 1,000-pound rock into your pocket. It took a year of cleaning out the dirt and impurities before the gem could finally be certified. It's been named the Serendipity Sapphire. The renowned gemologist Dr. Gamini told BBC News that it's the biggest sapphire he has ever seen in his life. Number 2. Fossil treasures. 2 amateur paleontologists have discovered a brilliant treasure trove of marine fossils thanks to an unexpected partner. The British paleontologists used Google Earth to find the rare treasure hoard. The couple, Neville and Sally Hollingsworth, were bored during the pandemic and were poking around on the Google app when the unexpected discovery caused them to contact the Museum of Natural History. The couple noticed something strange about the geology in the Cotswolds and suggested that archaeologists get down there and start digging. Amazingly, they did. But what nobody could have imagined is that a 3-day excavation in June, scientists would discover over 1,000 significant specimens, 3 new species of animal, a new ecosystem, and some of the best preserved fossils and ancient sea animals that lived over 167 million years ago. Things like feather stars, sea lilies, and starfish. According to the report from the New York Times, the reason so many amazing fossils were discovered at the site is because there was an underwater mudslide that buried all these creatures in an instant. It was because of the Hollingsworth's sharp eyes and Google Earth that the fantastic discovery was made possible. And number 1. Underwater treasure. An underwater engineer discovered the most valuable underwater treasure ever. It happened back in July of 1985, after 16 years searching. Mel Fisher uncovered the shipwreck of the Nuestra Señora de Atocha, which contained within its ruined hull $1 billion worth of treasure. 35 years later, it is still the most valuable shipwreck in human history. The story of the shipwreck goes back to 1622. At the time, Spain was sending 2 fleets per year to both South America and Mexico to pillage treasure and then bring it back home. Silver and gold were mined like crazy and sent by mules to Panama, where it was loaded onto galleons and taken back to Spain. It's been estimated that Spain shipped roughly $8 billion worth of treasure from between 1530 and the late 1700s. But in 1622, there was a treasure so large that a fleet consisting of 28 ships was brought to bring it back to Spain. The galleons, the Atocha, and the Santa Margarita were the largest in the fleet and were carrying the most treasure. Well, both of these ships, along with 6 other vessels, were lost near Key West. Out of all 265 men on board the Atocha, only 3 sailors and a pair of slaves survived. The treasure was lost for over 400 years until Mel Fisher came along and found it. However, the treasure spent 8 years in court before Fisher was awarded full rights to what he found. Since then, he's gotten rich and opened his own museum, displaying many of the treasures inside. Thanks for watching. Which of these treasures would you love to have for yourself? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.